And welcome once again to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me here today is Sam Coy from Coy Consulting Group. And also joining me is Dr. Christopher Lassiter from OIC Global Mentorship. I want to thank you both for joining me here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, Dr. Coy, my first question goes out to you. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and your organization at this point.
Thank you. You know, that's a loaded question.
Okay.
There's a lot in there.
Sure.
I can tell you, I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and lived there my entire life. Went through schooling there and graduated from South High School in Worcester.
Okay.
So at a very early age, I really decided to invest in my education. I wanted to be a lawyer when I was 9.
Yes.
And when I went through, I didn't really necessarily know what it took to do that.
Okay.
I didn't have anybody around me to kind of give me the steps, but I just knew that I had to do well in school.
You're right.
And, you know, go to college, and that was the first step.
Yes.
And so I did that. I went to Northeastern University, and I got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and went on to law school and got my law degree from Massachusetts School of Law.
Okay, great.
And then I went off to Harvard University Extension School, and I did 2 years there. Went on to get a master's degree from Nichols College, my MBA in Masters in Business. And then I finalized, because there was no other more degrees to go get, I went and got one more, which was my PhD in law and public policy. But throughout that time, I worked in nonprofit organizations. So I worked with youth, I worked with young boys and young girls between the ages of 13 and 18. And you know, the work that I was doing was so impactful. Somebody gave me some advice once, and they said, if you wanted to make decisions, you had to be the boss.
Right.
So that's not something you tell an overachiever, because that's exactly what I was going to go do. And from that, I was able to open my own consulting firm to help nonprofits stay open, because I worked within them, and I knew the impact that those organizations had on young people being able to thrive and survive. And so I made it a mission of my own to be able to help those organizations, so much so that all of my doctoral research is on nonprofit sustainability. So Coy Consulting Group actually does that work with nonprofits, where they help nonprofits stay open, stay viable, and be able to manage, because we know in any political environment and climate, funding can change, and funding helps these organizations stay open. And if you don't have a way to measure your success and measure your performance, you're not going to be as competitive in the market for those funding to be able to stay open. So that's what Coy Consulting Group does. It gives that information and helps build those models to be able to replicate and stay open in terms of tracking outcomes.
Okay, very nice.
Thank you.
Very good. And Dr. Christopher, tell me, what is OIC Global Mentorship? What is it all about?
So what OIC is all about is it's an acronym for Overlearning and Confidence, which is what Dr. Coy has done and what she inspires. The overlearning piece is to give the youth, the students of today, what most of us didn't have growing up, which is the confidence to be an overachiever in school and in academics. Oftentimes there's a cap put on what you should be able to do, how you should master something and not be a jack of all trades. In reality, especially in the landscape that we live in now, being flexible is what gives you the tools to be sustainable for yourself and your family in this ever-changing landscape, especially during the time of high technology, big data, and disruptive technology. So OIC is a global mentor program that seeks to instill confidence into the students of today.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question. We are living in a time where we know academic excellence is good.
Right.
I praise any great academic achiever. Being academic is powerful, and it is a smart thing to do. But you were mentioning that you think that people should be more multi-skilled, and I think that is very important. We find that today there are many people who got some humongous student loans. They got the education,
That's right.
Yes.
but when they go to the workforce, what they are earning. And for some reason, companies are now telling overachievers, overlearners, well, listen, we can find many of you out there, and
that's right.
They are keeping the pay packs way down. They're not even giving you full-time hours. You're not even getting insurance coverages. And they're not earning enough to pay back a heavy student loan.
That's right.
Furthermore, to sustain themselves. In a time like this, what best advice would you give students today considering all these variables?
That's a great question.
Very great question. So I'll put it this way. There's so many times in my life where I've run into someone saying that business majors, at the time I went through, were not getting jobs because everyone wanted a specialization.
Right.
Here's the reality. If I go into a job situation where I may work as a low-level banker or teller, if I have management experience, if I have management education, guess what I know how to do once I get inside the job? I know how to show my value. Oftentimes for me as a black male, I don't usually get the truth from people. I don't usually get the best information up front. So what happens for me when I take this journey into law school is that, yeah, I have an extra student loan, but guess how much money that's gonna save me in avoiding situations where people discount me or I don't get a job that I know I'm qualified for. I know how to speak to those situations. So in terms of the student loan, it's in business we have a saying, you either pay tuition now or you pay tuition later. That tuition later comes in the form of missteps that cost you. So education and higher education gives you the inside details of how the world works. Now for the youth, here's what they should know as a older millennial, as the big brother to the millennial groups. And we started the whole job bouncing, you know, we're not staying, there's no pension, pension game that we're gonna play. Give us our respect and our credibility now, or we'll go to the next spot. Here's my advice to the youth. As many student loans as you can occur, the information that you garner that the student loans may be a byproduct of, the information that you garner gives you the power and the tools you need to move around and make your way in positive economic fashion. For example, if you understand how taxes work, if you understand how income tax refunds work, if you understand why it's important to have a business in this capitalistic economic market that we live in America, then you know how to reduce your taxable income, your debt liability, programs that you can get into. You won't know that without education. But I did it the smart way, of course. I went enlisted in the military. Okay. So most of my loans have been taken care of. My education is paid for.
Okay.
If I could add,
sure.
Yeah, if I could just add to what he's saying, I think the more degrees you have, the more people tend to listen to you.
Right.
Going and getting a higher education is about positioning. And what you're doing is you're positioning yourself, one, as an investment in you,
right,
but you're investing maybe not in somebody else's company, but you can invest in your own.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so those student loans that you incur as an investment, then you don't have to wait for someone else to be able to hand you something or give you something. You can create your own path and your own journey. And I think that's what something Dr. Lasser and I have been able to bear the fruits of. And people, we hear a lot of times, well, college isn't for me. Well, you know what? That is a deficit, I think, for a lot of young people who believe that the old way of doing things, where you stay in a job 30 years and then you collect a pension and then you retire at 65 and then you travel. I say that's not the way it should go. But we are placed upon, these societal norms have been placed upon us to almost limit us in the way that we move around.
Absolutely.
So I've traveled the world, right? I have gotten all of these degrees. I'm a doctor. I'm still in my 30s, right? So I have done so much that a lot of people wait until they're retired and too old to move around can do. And I think that it does our young people a disservice to continuously place upon them these barriers to say that it's okay to say, well, college isn't for everybody. Because if you don't know the laws in which you're governed by, meaning go to law school so you can understand which way to go and you can defend yourself, you got to go to school. If you want to open up your own business and you want to know how business works, guess what you have to go do? Go learn that. Right? And if you want to be able to make a way for yourself and be a subject matter expert, guess what you have to go do? Go get that. Otherwise, who's going to listen to you? How are you going to pave your way? You're still going to wait for someone else to hire you. When, as a young black woman walking in the door, I'm already intimidating. People are already scared to death about what it is that I bring to the table. Knowing that I just want to come here and help, you know? But see, going up against that, you know, too many times then prompted me to say, okay, I have everything I need to make it. And so this confidence that I've been able to garner throughout all of those transitions and going through school and sitting in that class and being disciplined has helped me be able to sit in front of you and in front of Dr. Lassiter as a powerful young black woman who can take and handle her own and be able to make a way and pave a way for those who come behind me, because what ends up happening is when it's time for me to sit down, somebody else has got to stand up and take the lead. And Dr. Lassiter's program teaches these kinds of techniques so that we're not walking in a blind state. We got our eyes open. We're looking at the traps that are set. We're looking at things that we can, you know, miss and not have to worry about. And this is something that I think we really try to make visible, because they don't see enough of what we got going on.
That's right. So when we go do these workshops, what we love to see is the students say, "Oh, I see, I get it," and then they're off.
You know, this I mean, this is good. I mean, this is a good mental exercise and thoughtfulness for the younger generation. But I want to ask this question, because I know for a fact that there were a lot of college dropouts and some who never even see a college door that started their own businesses and turned around and employed college students to make them wealthier. And they didn't even proceed after that to become wealthy. Do you think that even though that education provide a tool of excellence in your life, do you think that there is something on the line beside the education that really makes you, like your talent, whatever you are good in? I mean, if you are good in, let's say mechanics, I mean, you got to go to school to do that too. But there could be some natural talent. 'Cause I believe in everyone, their talents.
Absolutely.
And if you master your talent and you do good in your talent, that talent's supposed to make you who you are. The education is great, because I know there are a lot of people who has excellent education, PhDs, and they ain't going any further. I know, and I'm saying this for a fact because I know a family member of mine who has it all and who has a great education, but still can't make the move.
Get off the porch.
To get to another level, even though they have the education. And there are people that are way less than that person that just climbing and climbing and climbing and making progress. And I guess there's still a lot of educated folks out there like that. There's some folks, oh, well, I have my bachelor's, I have my master's. I'm not going to work for this, I'm not going to work for that. I need to get this, I need to get that. And they never get anywhere. So what would you have to say about that?
So great question. And how can I? So there's always this battle that we face whenever we are speaking to someone and they say, well, that's great, you have your education, but I've done it in the real world. I have real life experience. Well, here's the deal.
Well, what they call it is a PhD in the
PhD
street.
in the street.
Right.
So here's the deal. We didn't get to go jump in a book and hide for 15 years. I had a full-time job the entire time I've been in school, from undergrad, grad to post-grad. Dr. Coy has done the same. She was a prosecutor by the age of 24.
Nice.
So it's not a matter of either or. It's a matter of, if you're going to be great, if you're going to sit at the table, you need both.
Yes.
So the age-old argument is, does talent beat skill? Talent wins to a certain level, then skill takes over.
Right.
It's the technical piece that school gives you, the structure, or how you understand the in-between parts. Because you're gonna be able to do whatever it is that you that you're passionate about out in the world.
Yes.
What happens, the downfall for students is, like myself being an introvert, I do public speaking.
Okay.
Without having a speech class in college and undergrad, I never would have turned that switch.
Okay.
In order to pass, in order to be successful and complete my degree, I had to grab these skills. I had to learn how to stand and present in front of an audience. That changed the game for me. There's many people out in the world who are extrovert, who, like Dr. Coy, can go command a crowd at any given time.
Yes.
But without that, the credibility of the education, the degree, we can argue. But her being an expert, I think it's time to be quiet. That's how it goes.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Well, I want to touch a little piece because I just heard you was a prosecutor and so forth. How do you see the judicial system favored black people opposed to white in this country?
Yeah, it's no secret. Research says, studies show that our criminal justice system is flawed. That there is a huge disparity between blacks and whites when it comes to the prosecution of these individuals. The numbers of black men in prison are more higher than whites, and we know this. This is not a new conversation. It's an old one.
Right.
And for the things that I had experienced at being very young, one has been a great experience for me. One, because it's something where I've gotten a huge amount of professionalism and how to move around the system, the criminal justice system, the understanding of how things work, who's in charge, who makes decisions, what your power is as a person working for the Commonwealth. That was really huge in terms of my development, my professional development. However, there were some things that I saw that I didn't quite agree with. So I knew at that level, I couldn't make decisions or make change. What I needed to do was go get some education and get positioned so that I can. So my PhD is in law and public policy. Because guess what happens when people are prosecuted under laws that aren't just? That's policy. Guess who's sitting at the table writing that policy? Not us.
That's right.
So what we need to do is get positioned. If we want to see change, and I'm saying real change, you have to be positioned to sit at the table. And nobody's going to listen to you unless you have the credentials.
That's true. We saw up to this week, a judge got like 28 years for selling black people. And we know quite a few prisons here in the United States are privatized.
Indeed.
And judges were just selling off these young teenage kids to the system, just to these companies make money, and he got his caps and so forth. Even here more recently, we saw that Manafort, he got 47 months.
Yes.
I mean, let's say that was a normal person like me or you or somebody else. We'd be spending
we'd be under the jail.
Exactly.
There would be no discussions. There would be, it probably wouldn't even make the news. As a professor, I teach intro to criminal justice. I also teach criminology. I also teach issues of diversity and oppression, in which all of these intertwine because our systems are inherently racist and discriminatory.
Yes.
This is not a secret. This is something that has been deliberate and built upon in the building of America and the systems that we're all held under. And so, for me, it's different in terms of going out and protesting because we've seen that since the civil rights movement. We've been protesting here and there. My concern is making sure that our young people aren't steered in a different direction against and away from education. We do not promote, well, college isn't for everybody. Well, wait a minute, because at the end of the day, if we want to see real impact and we want to see real change, we can't stop traffic. It's not going to change anything. No. We need educated individuals to push the envelope forward, sit at the table, make decisions, write the policy, question the policy. Why is it that they want to arm teachers in schools? Now, on the surface, it sounds good where it's like, well, if there's in case of an outside shooter, we want to have teachers be able to protect our students and things of that nature. But that only comes a dime a dozen. We understand it. We hear it out in the news. But the reality is you have these teachers who have weapons on them, and we expected to have our children who already struggle in education learn. It's not a conducive learning environment. That is a policy that was deliberately put in place. You have to think about who that impacts. At the end of the day, our children are impacted by this. This is what they're seeing. And if we want to make change, if we want to be able to say, wait a minute, before that goes forth, why don't we think about the fact that you have 95% of teachers across America are white women in our schools who are not traditionally understanding of Black culture.
Yes.
And so when you have an aggressively acting young Black man or young Black boy in these classes and they're afraid, they have a weapon, this is the ultimate situation that I'm sure has to get thought out through. Now, what happens is you'll have people taking their students out of school and homeschooling them. What about the parents that can't do that? What about the parents who are working or don't have the capacity to be able to teach those children? So you have kids that are stuck in the ultimate bully situation.
Which is an issue in the school systems now. It's been that way. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama,
Right, okay.
the Jim Crow South.
Right.
So teachers engage in bullying more than one would think.
Yes.
I've been on both sides of it. So I was also a high school teacher and a middle school teacher, as well as now a college professor. And I can tell you, high school and middle school teachers need oversight. They're biased. They bring their worldviews into the classroom. And without the technicals of education, I would still be a volunteer participant in my own discrimination.
Yes.
It's only the fact that my education gives me the knowledge and tools and skills to speak to situations that I face every day, that I'm able to overcome those situations. Without education, it doesn't happen. I don't sit here today without it.
Well, you know, one of the things I feel blessed with is that over the past couple of weeks, I had a gentleman named a former professor of Harvard, I think it was, Dr. Jules Dudley, who would have marched with Martin Luther King.
All right.
Wow.
Signed more than 2 million books to Africa continent, which Newton was a giver of 40,000 of those books.
Wow.
A champion of education, a great historian. But what I'm proud of is that I've seen, because he's retired now, I've seen the past, but to that one person that is great of the past, I'm seeing two great doctors in the future and in the present. And my advice, or the question I will want to ask you all, because we know for a fact that there are a lot of young Black people out there in Chicago and Washington and those places who just gone like crazy, and they don't see what's going on around them, and they're killing themselves out, destroying their own selves. What kind of plea or advice would you want to give those people? And I'm going to ask both of you all that question, because I think it's very important to two individuals who have come to this level of greatness, and I use the word greatness. We need to bring other Black folks up in society to think with this same philosophy. What advice first would you give?
Well, my first piece of advice, we have a formula. And can I speak to one of the cameras?
Well, sure. But if you want, go ahead, speak to the camera. Okay.
Bring the OIC program to your school system, your school district, your PTA meeting, whatever you need to do. Have these two individuals start the process. We have beat on our craft. We've worked in the communities. We worked in the school system. The advice is to get the students engaged, to understand, for them to understand what school is all about. I tell my students all the time, you don't know what school is. What is school? What does it mean? In essence, what we need to know is that it's training. School is training for when you get out into the world, how the game works, how the game is played. We think most of the time in Black youth that we can just, walk out and make a life. Social media has done a great disservice to our youth.
That's right.
I know schools that I've taught in high school, the young brothers are walking around with grills, tattoos, face tattoos. As best I can explain it, you only reserve the right to walk around with a piercing in your face and your hair however you want to, once nobody can separate you from the opportunities that you have paid dues to hold. I don't know another way to give that information other than to say there are certain steps that enlighten the mind. In this day and age with these youth, you have to have a very sharp tip to pierce and then to open up.
Okay.
As a black man, as a combat veteran, I'm less than 2% of the population. As a PhD holder, I'm less than 2% of the population. My personality, according to the Myers-Briggs, puts me at less than 2% of the population. I'm a rarity walking around. Dr. Coy is, as far as all of my research says, she's the most formally educated person and future president than we've ever had in the future.
Beautiful.
Sharp points that pierce the mind.
Okay. And Dr. Coy, we're running down to the last 3 minutes, but what would be your advice as a doctor to the young black folks out there? They need to aspire and achieve great things in their life. Yeah. Take it away.
Thank you. I want to say, I grew up in the projects. My mother was on drugs for the greater part of my teenage and almost adult life. My father committed suicide when I was 14 years old.
Okay.
And, you know, coming from that background, I grew up around drugs, guns, gangs, violence. I had every excuse not to get out of the bed. I understand what it's like, and not to say that my journey and my path is similar to everybody else's. Everybody has their own journey to walk. But miss me with the excuses. And this is the one thing that I want to share, is that too many of us out here use our misfortunes and our horrible things that happen to us in our life as an excuse to fail. And it is I submit to all of my young people to use it as a motivating factor to succeed.
Right.
Because if anybody had a reason not to do well, it was me. If anybody had a reason not to get out of the bed, it was me. But I had to fight those battles every single day. So I tell young people, miss me with those excuses. You have every right to invest in you and in your future.
Absolutely.
And it'll be a disservice to you and your entire community, your entire family, and all the people that you are responsible to fail in that respect. Because when we sit down, who is going to lead us?
That's right. That's right. That is perfectly said. So we're down to the last minute. 30 seconds sums up your piece. And
if I could, Errol, if you don't mind.
Definitely.
Dr. Lassiter and I's program is based on a book that he had wrote called How to Change the World in 20 Minutes.
Okay, nice.
And this book, it really explains about race, religion, culture, community. It's written in a way that is absolutely beneficial, and you get smarter after you read this book.
Okay.
According to Dr. Lassiter, that you need to read, and it's for junior high, high school kids, and undergrads. So and that's what our OIC program is based off of.
Okay. Well, nice.
And anybody that has a nonprofit, if they want to stay open, you can call Coy Consulting Group.
Okay, sure. Well, we have come to the last few seconds of our program. Dr. Coy, it was an honor having you. Dr. Christopher, it's a pleasure having you.
Same.
And I hope that sometime in the near future, like a month from now, we can come back here and have a next ongoing story. I think you all have so much to offer in terms of for the community and so forth. So to all those out there, thank you for tuning in once again on Living in the 21st Century. Bye-bye.